Ladies and gentlemen, this Gaming.com video, we're going to be further discussing Windows Azure and how the Xbox One cloud fits in. Because there have been recent white papers that have been published, and we're going to go into them in just a moment, that points out that Azure actually has the best performance out of any of the major cloud-based computing solutions. It actually handily beats out Amazon's S3, which has been established for a while now, but it still pretty much kicks its butt. And we're going to go into this because I actually saw the news a while back. It's been floating around for a while, but I didn't actually do anything on it because there are some problems with the news, and I'll go into them in just a moment. But the basic premise is that there has been a company, it's enterprise storage company, and they're known as Nasuni, that is Nasuni, and they've published a white paper, and they've done basically a series of tests. I'll go into just a few of the results in just a moment, but it demonstrates that Amazon's S3 and Windows Azure blob storage, which are two of the strongest players on the market, they're pretty damn powerful, and in their testing it shows that Azure is a significant step forward from Amazon. In fact, in just 1 year, they've basically beaten Amazon in performance, scalability, and stability. So performance, scalability, and stability, Microsoft have won in terms of their Azure. And so Microsoft now has emerged as a top performer in each of the categories, even though it's not been on the market anywhere near as long, and it hasn't even got as much, it doesn't have the same volume of storage under management. So it's clear that Microsoft are doing the right thing. We know that Microsoft have, well, let's just not mince words. They've invested hundreds of millions into Azure. They're basically continuing to throw money into their Azure project, and of course Azure is basically a virtual machine system. So the reason I was not going to do this video originally is because from the perspective of us as gamers, it actually doesn't mean that huge amount of, it doesn't really mean that much, but I had some questions on it, and basically people have been asking me, what does it really mean? How does it affect the Xbox One? Well, as you know, Microsoft has said that they have hundreds of thousands of Azure servers that it will be basically reserving for the Xbox One, and it will continue to grow and offer those services for not only us as gamers, but also developers, games developers, and they can use those to do a number of things, including rendering anything from CG movies to provide things such as game servers or computing, whatever it needs to be done, really. And obviously from the perspective of a developer, it's pretty cool because you can basically write scripts, you can set up servers to automatically create another instance if you feel, or if they feel that, say for example, let's just make up a number, and let's say you've got 10 servers, and let's say you set up a threshold, and let's say that threshold is 90%. So if you start going above 90%, so let's say you go to 92% usage of your servers, an 11th or a 12th server could spin up, start, and then it would obviously drop down the usage, and then let's assume that, it goes to like 90% again, in which case a 13th or maybe a 14th server would start. But then let's say it goes a bit later in the day, and let's assume that users start dropping off, so it goes to like 70%. So the servers would slowly start to wind down, and then it would go back to the 10 or maybe 9 or whatever. And this is really good from the perspective of publishers and developers because it reduces the cost. So what does it actually mean when they're talking about the performance? Well, it's actually pretty big. It basically goes into various benchmark results. In other words, how fast computer is, how fast, what the chances of read errors are, and so on. For example, Microsoft's read errors were basically so small they didn't even register on the system, as was Rackspace. However, HP's was pretty huge. It was 0.0099, and considering Microsoft didn't even get off the ground, that's still pretty high. Similarly, Microsoft did not have any read errors or write errors. So obviously this means a very, very stable system. That means that you're not getting any issues with performance or data corruption, that type of thing, which is obviously really good. And interestingly enough, you've got a very good average response time. You've got an average response time of basically 0.48 seconds for Microsoft Windows Azure, and that average uptime is pretty damn high as well. It's 99.996, which is slightly below Amazon. Amazon's was 100%. So even so, it's still very good. Also, Microsoft, get ready for some entertainment here. Microsoft on the Index Cloud Storage, they got 0.1.0, so it's basically the highest percent possible for deleting. So they're basically beating out Amazon by pretty much double. And for small files, they've also got the highest performance as well for 1 megabyte plus. So basically, for various read and write access, they got pretty much the highest possible performance that you can get, which is obviously a very good piece of news for Windows, for Azure. So that begs the question, what does that actually mean for gamers? Because people have been asking me, well, is that good for the Xbox One? Not really. It's good in terms of for the perspective of gamers, and obviously it's better to have good performance than crap performance. But the thing is, Microsoft have already stated that there's going to be a certain amount of performance allocated to you. So all they would have to have done is, if their machines had performed crap, they could have simply just allocated more resources to get that percentage of performance. In other words, they would have just done benchmarking on the hardware, figured out what amount of resources was required to get the percentage that they promised, and then just allocate it. But because their resources, the CPU and so on, they've obviously got newer hardware, they can just simply allocate less percentage of a machine to get the same benefit, which from Microsoft's perspective is good because it reduces the cost, and obviously that also reduces the cost of developing on the Azure. To give you an idea, we actually, at my work, the company I work for, which I won't mention the names and so on, but we actually do utilize Azure. I have done testing myself, personally, on Azure versus Amazon, and I won't go into all the details because it's pretty damn lengthy, and some of it is obviously, company stuff, so I can't tell you guys it simply because I'm under non-disclosures and so on. But from the testing that I've done personally internally, I can tell you that, and I have got videos of this as well on RGT, so you can check it out, but it just happens that Amazon's stuff is a little bit trickier to utilize. That isn't to say that it's unintuitive, they offer so many different solutions, but they have kind of a muddled product offering, and I think that Amazon stuff could be a hell of a lot better very easily. They just need to change a few bits around. It's not exactly as intuitive as maybe it should be. Microsoft make it extraordinarily easy to deploy things in terms of platforms, so they make it very easy to deploy a version of Linux or a version of Windows. On the other hand, I will also argue that from the perspective of someone developing, I don't like how Microsoft allow you to deploy a third-party distribution. In other words, a third-party operating system. You can't do it via GUI. It has to be done via command line. It's a bit messier than what it should be. And quite frankly speaking, their tools under their own platforms is a bit crap. they could improve that, but that's nothing to do with the perspective of gamers. That's just me kind of giving you guys a bit of information. I will say, though, that this does not absolve Microsoft of problems. In other words, the performance is great, but remember, from the perspective of computational performance, in terms of like gaming and so on, it doesn't usually need to read and write that much to a server, because once the data is loaded, once the level is loaded, it will obviously slightly probably reduce the loading times per level, and while the server's accessing data, but that's probably going to be offset by your own console being slower to load anyway. But once the data is probably stored in local memory, I'm guessing, and obviously I've not done development with the game's developers on this, so I'm just guessing that most of it is probably stored in local memory anyway, and so you're not going to have problems with it reading or writing. So the computational power is the only thing that really matters, but it doesn't, it's going to be fine regardless. Obviously, for things such as cloud computing, in terms of figuring out, say, physics and so on, you've still got the issues of latency. And honestly speaking, that's not going to be going away. So it's great that Microsoft's industry reports show this. And honestly speaking, I'm actually quite happy about it, because I think that the cloud industry is still really young, and I think that there's several kicks in the butt that everything needs right now. Which is kind of a technical thing, but I'm not going to kind of go super into it in this video because it's far outside the scope of it. But what it is into is that we still have latency issues. Microsoft have released a series of tests which show that, the average latency is like 50 to 60 ms in some cases, but they've not exactly published how that works in their own testing. And even if you say 60 ms plus, obviously that's in best case scenarios based on your own connection, so there's still going to be problems. It doesn't mean that cloud computing is going to be able to sync to every frame of animation. It's good from the perspective of the Xbox One. It's good from the perspective of dedicated servers. It's good from the perspective of games developers, but it's not going to be the magical fruit. It's not going to suddenly augment the Xbox One any more than what we originally did think it did. So in other words, there's still going to be those latency issues. And so, it's a good piece of technology. It's a very solid, robust piece of technology. But just because of how the internet works, which is no fault of Microsoft's, they can't do a magical pill to reduce and eliminate latency across a continent or a network. It's just impossible. Then we still have those issues. But I just wanted to cover this for you guys anyway. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.